So if I may, during the zoning hearing, there was a resident next door that had several questions pertaining to the riparian buffer. I think they were talking about trees that had deteriorated and falling every which way, every direction. Are you doing anything in the plan to address any of that situation, or?
We're basically leaving the riparian buffer alone as per the requirements that we really, the church had talked about possibly going in and cleaning up some of the dead areas, but overall, we're not planning to have a major impact in that.
I thought in response to discussion with the planning commission, the church had indicated to reach out to the adjacent property owner of the overall parcel and have further discussions.
Right, yeah. So there is some, I think there is talk about going in and cleaning up some of the dead areas that are in there, some of the trees and stuff that have fallen. So.
Is there a time frame for the whole project perhaps to be done?
Probably it's going to be completed next year. If we get started in the spring or the fall, we probably yeah, probably a 8 to 10 month construction period.
All right. First waiver modification is relatively simple, related to wetlands. They've delineated all wetlands around the project area and the disturbance. They're just asking for relief to have to go over to some of the more remote areas that are not being altered, not proposed for disturbance. And so, in all these motions and were recommended for conditional approval or approval by the planning commission. So, first one would be, would be a motion to approve a waiver modification of section 194.14C4A, 194.14E7, and 194.40 of the subdivision land development ordinance to relieve the applicant from delineating and depicting additional wetlands on the subject tract beyond the wetland areas that are currently shown within the immediate proximity of the project area and associated proposed disposals.
I'll make that motion. I'll second. Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
The next one relates to vertical curb, which has been consistent in other projects and recommended by Scott in our office, and that would be a motion to approve a waiver modification of section 194.33B1 of the subdivision land development ordinance to authorize the applicant to utilize 18-inch vertical curb to meet the current point standard of 22 inches.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry. No. You say aye or no?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, motion carried.
That's delayed reaction to all, really.
Yeah. It's the heat.
The next motion relates to the requirement for 50-foot interval cross sections along the frontage, which is a standard way of detailing improvements along the frontage of the road right-of-way as an alternate, which is also acceptable and sometimes preferred, depending on the nature of the improvements, is an enlarged view of those areas. So in working with us, we have agreed to recommend and support a waiver modification to go with an enlarged plan. So the motion would be to approve a waiver modification of section 194.14B9 related to the requirement to provide detailed cross-sections that require road frontage improvements at a 50-foot interval and authorize the alternative submission of an enlarged plan view with detailed topography and spot elevations to the satisfaction of the township.
I would make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
And maybe as a preview or background for the following waivers related to the road frontage improvements, they typically would be, let's say along the 272 corridor, would be some widening to the standard required width, curb, and then sidewalk. In this location, in light of various factors, now let Scott chime in, including drainage, the development pattern anticipated beyond this parcel to the west, trying to minimize required stormwater infrastructure, additional inlets, accommodating the grading, minimizing disturbance to the area, I'll call it the environmentally sensitive area, highlighted in green. There was support for proposing something alternate, minimizing the extent of curbing and eliminating curbing, or at least deferring it, and then considering an alternate pedestrian trail system internal to the site, graded in a way to allow drainage to exit the roadway and down through and into the intended drainage pattern to the west. So and the other issue was widening. There was an evaluation of existing carway conditions, not to mention the township recently overlaid the entire carway. So the likelihood of additional alterations and need for substantial widening at the current time, it doesn't exist. So anything that further highlight?
Now, this goes with that we're trying to keep Denver Road narrower, not wider, changing what it is going fast. So this is in trend with that. It's also the trend of trying to utilize some alternate materials to concrete for sidewalk.
Yeah, and it's in line with some things we did with WVH, where we also narrowed the parkway there and limited widening. There was a need for curb due to drainage on that side, and flat sections and inlet. So you do have to deal with each location specifics, and somebody may look at one and say it's not identical. But the goal is to reduce the carway, accommodate drainage in the simplest way and most efficient way. And so, is there any other background questions now? Okay. So the first item would be to approve a waiver modification of section 194.25C1, 194.25J1, and 194.25K related to the required improvements and widening of the existing streets along the property frontage to relieve the applicant from performing any required widening along every road.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next would be a motion to approve a waiver modification of section 194.32A and 194.2C1 related to the requirement to install concrete curbing or concrete sidewalk along the frontage of the subject property and authorize the applicant to install a 5-foot wide asphalt pedestrian path along the frontage of the property as depicted on the current plans in lieu of the concrete sidewalk.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
One minor clarification there, that's one minor typo there, section 194.32A, 194.32C1. Minor correction there. Next item would be to approve a deferral of the requirements of section 194.33A1 related to the installation of concrete curb along the frontage of the subject property, conditioned on notation accepted to the township being placed on the plan related to the deferral and the applicant's obligation to complete the improvements as required by the township in the future.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next one relates to the street trees that was previously discussed, and the motion is to approve a waiver of the requirements of section 194.41C related to the requirement for street trees to be installed along the frontage of the property. Once again, it's primarily because they're on the inside of a curb and the exit for sight line, in addition to the fact that the western portion of the site currently has trees and would be retained, so only a small portion of the frontage and the access drive would actually be relevant.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next would be to approve a waiver modification of section 194.25L5 related to the requirement to provide a 100-foot clear sight triangle at the intersection of the existing access drive to Denver Road and allow the applicant to utilize a reduced symmetrical clear sight triangle that is maximized to the extent possible to fit within the constraints of the existing project. And as we have done with other projects, the standard is a 100-foot clear sight triangle for a commercial industrial drive. We kind of view the requirements relative to the volumes and the volumes of the adjacent street and on smaller projects, not shopping center type of thing, projects. something on the order of 70 to 80 foot clear site triangle would be adequate, and that's what could be accommodated by following this standard.
Right. And include the removal of that central planting.
The center planting island within
Right.
the drive is to be removed as part of the project to improve maneuvering for all vehicles, including emergency response.
Good. I'll make a motion.
I'll second
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
And the final item, if everybody's on board, would be to conditionally approve the Mount Zion Baptist Church preliminary land development plan condition upon the applicant addressing all outstanding items outlining the fact that review letter dated July 30, 2018 to the satisfaction of township engineer, and township solicitor.
I'll second it. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
you, sir.
Thank you.
The final thing, Scott, is as you proceed, we talked about earlier having the submissions combined, and as you proceed and submit to the authority, the Conservation District responds with your new submission. It's an option to request the final plan, or the plan to be converted to a preliminary final if you want to opt for that, to avoid carry submission and some other things.
Okay,
So you can talk to us about it.
all right, that's fine.
The main, obviously, the goal at this point is get the outside agency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you have those, you're home free.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Russell, if I may, are we to assume this property to be property tax exempt because of the church, or how is that?
What the church is on, yeah, that's,
How do the other fees apply in a situation like that? Specifically rent and traffic impact?
right now, all properties pay all fees.
Okay.
It's fine. I'll meet Brent. You can hit me later.
They thought it was-
I know, that's why I keep saying that. It's
Okay.
older brother.
The next plan is, item on the agenda is the Timothy Young final land development plan. The township recently received request for the withdrawal
Yes, I
of the
do.
plan. The property was transferred from Mr. Young to another developer who has approached the township. In general terms, about picking up aspects of the project or proceeding. So the appropriate thing to do, since the prior plan has an expiration and there has not been formal decision on it, would be to acknowledge the withdrawal of the Timothy Young final land development plan since it's no longer the applicant. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next two are related to projects and financial security. The first one would be Cocalico Community Church, and that was a parking lot expansion project. Plan also shows some possible athletic fields related to grading. It was required to have an NPDES permit, which is still open. So the project's proceeding. There are aspects of the facilities that have not been completed. They did the first, in their mind, their first phase, which was the bulk of the new parking. There's also, they were proposing other improvements to the existing parking facilities to improve drainage and satisfy some of their concerns relative to pedestrian movements through the site. So the motion before you would be pretty typical at this point, is to authorize, and this is as a result of recent observation and follow-up, to authorize a $31,375 reduction in the current financial security being held by the township related to Cocalico Community Church parking lot expansion, stormwater management plan, resulting in the value of the remaining security being $42,173.
Nobody's here to recommend that.
I don't, we suggest
I'll
that.
make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
And the final one is the Yang stormwater management plan. There's a few items that the contractor needed to clean up as a result of past observations by Tony and office, myself. Recently, Tony and I visited the site, reviewed the facility, both with the contractor and the property owner. They're aware of the maintenance obligations, and as a result, we are recommending that you authorize release the remaining $1,500 financial security held by the township related to the daily stormwater management plan.
Nobody's ever recommended that.
No, we try to minimize the need for any consultant or representative.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
That would be it, unless there's any other questions on active projects or status of any construction or permitting.
Brett, can I ask you a question? This is something Scott and I have talked about in the past. Off the top of your head, and you probably don't know, but are there certain waiver modifications you're seeing that are pretty consistent across the board where we should start looking at those in terms of basically streamlining our processes, trying to, where they're consistently coming up?
I think there's always some, when an ordinance is the age the ordinance is, there's always things that evolve, and approaches that evolve. Some of those are technical items, updated standards. Yeah, that's always the case, and we always keep notes in our ordinances from zoning, subdivision land development, other, and write notes as to stormwater, how to think. I don't know that I would label it as streamlining the process. Obviously, if you're tripping over waivers that aren't applicable, that's not always helpful, but we identify those early. Pre-application meetings, we don't let people struggle trying to decide, is a waste of my time for this. We kind of say, here's, as we have done with the applicant who was just before you, here's where we're suggesting you go in light of current policies, and guide them down the path. So they weren't stumbling over the waiver, but an example is the curb one. This one we've always said we can clean up, and we're pretty comfortable with the current PennDOT standard. There's some others, and there's always some wording that you look back at and say that, that's either misleading or, so we're always.
Yeah, I guess what I'm fundamentally asking is, from a professional perspective on your end, right? Are there some of our older ordinances where it's appropriate for you to turn to us and say, hey, you might want to check this ordinance, this one's so old, it's so outdated, that we're doing a waiver modification on this one 80–90% of the time?
There's a few. I wouldn't say there's a long list of them, and I think the difficulty is you're writing a book and applying it to projects that vary in the scope, scale,
There's a lot of
topography.
Don't even exist
So
yet.
I think you could struggle forever trying to make the book perfect. I think it's more in how quick are you to direct somebody with the current ordinance you have. Yes, your ordinance, if you see flaws, fix them. But if not, flag them, approach, what is the township looking for, guidance from the board, what's their current vision, and share that with staff so that when we're out there talking in pre-application meetings or site meetings or general discussions and inquiries about possibilities, that we have a clear understanding where the board wants to take policy and we can implement that.
No, that's a good point.
And to answer your question, there is a process in place right now that
I have a running.
I just wrote him a note. I just handed it to him.
And then the one we talked about.
Is the noted section regarding curb height from 22 to 18 on your quote list of proposed changes on quote.
Yeah.
So, they've been tracking these things.
Yeah, we've got to start.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, Glenn, it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be, we try and make it more palatable for a developer coming in here, and that's why we do the pre-planning.
I think people can say, well, these waivers, it takes you even time to get through it, but trust me, our effort is not to have them struggle and decide. It's provide them guidance. These waivers would be applicable based on past history, based on site specifics, based on your topography, based on adjacent land uses, infrastructure in the front, just like this, certain waivers that are applicable down the road. And to write an ordinance that says, if this,
It's impossible.
and that are right, then do this, you're wasting your effort. You're better off giving clear guidance to staff and us encouraging the pre-application process, which we've been doing, and very effective.
Pre-planning meetings are very effective.
And I think that's shown itself actually with the property that's up for auction. There is a pre-application meeting minutes, detailed, saving staff, us all time, and that's because we took time to outline those answers. So they're being distributed and referenced, and it's stopping a lot of misinformation from being shared, or people making decisions off things that may not be true. And these are big decisions, people get in situations, and then try to fight their way through them, when the best answer is guide them so they're not in that situation. So-
No, and I appreciate that, because that's very valuable information. It really is us guiding you in terms of what we're looking to do and setting strategy, so that then you guys can facilitate what has to be done.
And the worst thing is somebody
Yeah,
not
I appreciate
to
that.
understand. I mean, why lead people here, guide them to how we see the process playing out, and then hit a wall, they'll look at us like,
Right.
what are you doing?
Right.
And I think it's work, having Scott, technical background, availability, presence here, that's all been very helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
So-
Ken?
Yeah, just a suggestion on a practical approach to this. The ordinance, like, say the ordinance has been around for a long time, and there's probably a lot of outdated stuff in there, but if it's outdated stuff that never comes up, it's kind of a moot point. Maybe if someone were to go back, say, 5 years, or whatever an appropriate length of time, go through and keep tally of the number of waivers that you've put on each section, and find out, are there sections that you're routinely having to get waivers on? That happens over and over again, and then fix those.
And that's what they're doing right now. They're
That's
doing
essentially
that.
what we're doing. And as an example, one waiver that commonly comes up is survey and detailed information 200 feet beyond the property.
Right.
I don't want to give that up.
No,
You know,
no,
you
you
tell
don't.
me the scope of the project, what's
Right.
adjacent. So once again, to try to write the ordinance to weed through all that, if this, that, and that, then only go 50 feet or then
Right.
go 200. So I think, once again, if we give clear direction, it's as simple as writing the letter. Or based on your scope, that waiver would be viewed favorably. I want a waiver of section such and such that. It's not a big bog down in the system. And if that's the perception, that's not correct. And once again, clear information guidance to us, clear guidance from us to the applicants. And I think that coordination's going well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Since we opened this up, I have this again on my manager's report, policy discussion continued. Reaching out to see who, and if anybody has developed flexible parking options, that there is nobody else in the county that's done that yet. So I talked to Warwick and a couple other municipal managers to see if anybody has developed that. I did talk to Vertu, and that's something we would like to start drafting up. We'll also start brainstorming right-sizing development in the township. I've thrown out these topics in the past, and we talked about a little bit of Denver Road today. We've already, in the last couple of years, have started right-sizing every single development. So it really began with Stony Point moving forward. So Stony Point does not have the 36-foot wide roadways like the older roads get. Someday, Kenny would wish you could have had that opportunity where you'd have wide roads to pave. Someday when Chris or his successor goes to pave some of these newer developments, are going to be 30-foot wide, 32 feet wide with on-street parking, or some places where there's no parking, 24 feet wide, or even less if it's one way. We do need to have a little bit of guidance in that. I'll be honest with you, it's kind of been over the last year manager-led. I'm making suggestions out about right-siding, and I'm kind of hoping I'm taking people in the right direction, and that everybody's in agreement. In most instances, the planning commission has gone along with a lot of the stuff at this point, but it would be nice to do what, not to put East Hemphill example, but East Hemphill, we meet once a year with the board of supervisors and the planning commission, to make sure everybody's on the same page and to give the staff some guidance. And it would be nice to flow some of these things through that we've been doing for the last couple of years and just get some buy-in, just to make it easier for Brent and I, when we're developing with land development. These are real dollar numbers. When you take a street and you reduce it by 20%, that's a real number to a developer in terms of cost. It's paving, it's storm drainage. We need to start having talks about where we put curb. Like we talked about on WH, some places we put curb on WH because we need to for stormwater. Or the project we just talked about tonight with the church, we did not put curb in there. Curb is looked at disfavorably by PennDOT. That's why we have difficulty with our 272 development, because we're calling out a curb corridor that flies in the face of current PennDOT policy right now. So it would be good for us to have a discussion about it. We probably should have some green developments that go no curb. And Brent and I were talking about that. That is actually a design that's out there now, where you do sidewalk in most instances, but you don't do curb. And it's good for the environment, it's good for them as Ford perspective. It reduces costs for the developer in the short term and for the township and the property owner long term. Anytime we put curb in there, that's the property owner's responsibility to replace it someday.
Right.
So we have a street that doesn't have curb, that's kind of money for that property owner in the future when they don't have to replace that curb.
Well, you know, years ago, and you said it earlier, the thought process was make the streets wider. Well, we've learned over the years that it costs more money. It doesn't help anything with speed. The wider the streets are, the more people fly on them. If you start narrowing them down, and I still have an article back there from when the late Bob Roggenberg was on the planning commission and head of the planning commission, called Skinny Streets. And it's a 10-year-old, probably 12-year-old article, but they were moving, and whoever wrote the article was going the right way. You know, you can't continue to make these streets wider and wider. It just creates all kind of hassle.
So Scott, just so I'm clear, what I'm hearing you say is you really, I agree with you, you made those comments, right? You really need now us to take the lead on sitting down with the planning commission.
I will be glad to help facilitate a discussion of what we're doing, but it would just be nice to get some consensus from
Okay.
both boards that this is the direction that we want to go.
Then if both of you are okay with that, I'll take the lead, I'll take the action item on that one then, in terms of, I'll talk to you about that, getting that meeting set up and talking to planning and see, do we do it biannually? And get some feedback from Brett, right? What's the right way to do it? Biannually, annually, quarterly, however you guys see fit. Right, I'm just throwing that out there as an example.
And some other things to think about, we will, West Ward Township right now is looking at creating a stormwater bank for small projects. That's something Brent and I have been talking, instead of having individual property owners and instances put rain garden stuff in and make a contribution for a bigger project that actually has a bigger bang for the buck and reduces their engineering and permitting. Streamline small projects, and also has a list of subdivision and land development ordinance and zoning text amendments. Just started going through all, we're working over two separate meetings that started addressing that.
And the pre-planning meetings have been a step in the right direction. Heretofore, it was like, well, we told you to do this, and then the guys do A, B, and C, and you come to the next meeting, oh, well, now you gotta do D, E, and F, and instead of laying all the stuff out at one fell swoop. You know, when you get representatives from each entity in there, you get the water sewer authority, you get the planning commission, everybody gets to hear the same spiel at the same time, so that was a step in the right direction. But yeah, continue on down the road, yeah.
And have those meetings well documented,
Yeah.
it's proven out.
Right.
There are resources that can be used again, and it's inevitable. People don't recall things exactly. Once you get to the minutes, it's in writing, and somebody says, I wasn't told, or I didn't think I, and then you hold them in minutes and you said, you know, we tried to be as clear as we can. But it's a lot of information, and it's an intense sharing of information, and we're adjusting it based on what we're seeing specifically on a concept. I mean, they often don't come in with something detailed, so it
Well-
puts pressure on the staff to to recognize what's in front of you, what it may evolve to, and be steering your answers to solve both a current issue, possibly a future change, but with a good team, it works fine. And the
And
fact
this
that we're
gentleman,
referencing meeting minutes from how many years back is,
this gentleman said exactly what you said. They still don't have the building design. You know, so those things happen.
right.
They have everything else, but they don't have the building
And we've
design.
encouraged them to try to close the whole loop. We've encouraged them, you see it in my letter. And yes, it adds a comment. People say, those letters are wrong, a lot of comments. But one of those comments is coordinated with the building code official. Too many times, they're hesitant to talk to Skip early on. They don't have everything refined. Well, we say, no, go reach out to Skip. Make sure you have basics, building classification, number of exits, how are you looking at certain code requirements? Are you interpreting properly? And be aware there might be 3 things that could affect how this lays out. And then you tell the site guy you need another exit. I got utilities there, I got a basin, I can't exit you there. So, and luckily, once again, Skip, he's willing to sit down with people early in the process and look at the concept and flag some things and share with Tony and I so that gets redistributed. So try to head them off. So ultimately, all these pieces have to come together.
Absolutely. One of the biggest deal breakers with large assembly buildings like this is square footage and sprinkler systems. That's a deal breaker from a financial standpoint. So then they got to redesign the building so they're under the threshold. That changes square footage, footprint, access, name. I mean, that's great.
There's a lot of variables.
Absolutely. And Skip with PCI has always been perceptive and involved in some of these things.
It could be reflect back to the authority. Now I need a different size name, now I need a different size service. Now I got to go tap across the street, now I got to.
More money, or less money, or
Yeah.
hopefully less.
No,
In that last plan, I was going to mention it also, Harvey recommended, and I sent this to him, to Brent, and to Mr. Scott Miller. The closest fire hydrants to this facility, one is at the corner of 272 and Denver Road, right in front of Turkey Hill. The next one is around the curve on Denver Road, heading towards Stony Run Village. Each direction is well over 750 feet. Not acceptable over those. And Harvey said, I cannot block any one of those roads with roads with you. That's it, nobody goes in and out. So he's requesting an on-lot fire hydrant coming from Denver Road entrance at their property entrance, coming up alongside their driveway in the grass and put a fire hydrant there with 5-inch stores and that, so that they can hook up immediately. That'll serve them and also the hotel property. And now the roads won't be shut down if there's an emergency and they'll shut it down. So I know the good thing. It's not a deal breaker, but it's going to be costing them, but it's got to be safe.
but that information has to be generated, received, coordinated back to them before they go applying to the authority within the night. So I think it's one of the many aspects that.
That's why we were out there today.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Look forward.
You don't want to stay.